Great. Welcome, everyone, to the 2024 Tenant Convention. I'm Paola Laverde, a member of the Berkeley Tenants Union and a former two-term rent board commissioner selected to be on the tenant slate in 2014 and 2018. I want to thank all of the organizations who participated in planning the 15th convention: Friends of Adeline, Healthy Black Families, the Gray Panthers, the East Bay Democratic Socialists of America, who are allowing us to use their Zoom. Thank you very much. The Young Democratic Socialists of America, UC Berkeley, Wellstone Democratic Renewal Club, UAW 4811, and Cal Berkeley Democrats. Every election cycle since 1994, the community has come together to select the candidates who will run on the progressive pro-tenant slate for the seats available on the rent board. This year, there are 4 seats available on the board. The rent board is made up of 9 elected officials who oversee the agency that enforces Berkeley's rent stabilization and good cause for eviction ordinance that was voted in by the people of Berkeley in 1980. The rent board enforces rent caps, provides mediation services between tenants and landlords, and enforces habitability standards and other tenants' rights. The tenant convention came into reality after the 1992 election, when a majority of the rent board was taken over by pro-landlord commissioners who began dismantling tenant protections. The community came together to create a process to ensure that the candidates running for the seats on the board supported the law to uphold tenants' rights. So since 1994, the convention has ensured a progressive pro-tenant slate. It is important to protect and expand tenants' rights in Berkeley at this juncture in our history, as we are up against some very powerful forces that are ripping apart our community and selling out the city wholesale to real estate and developer interest, among other special interest lobbies. I say this because 2 years ago, the community that elected a progressive pro-tenant slate lost a seat because of 2 former rent board commissioners who got their start in politics at this convention, standing on the shoulders of tenants, successfully hijacked the process and went against the slate with their own candidate. I am calling out 2 former rent board commissioners, Jesse Arreguin and Igor Tregub. They have sold out tenants and this community. Mayor Arreguin is now taking money from the California Apartment Association, going against an explicit pledge he made, and he is taking money from the real estate PAC and other corporate interests in his effort to make it into the state Senate. Igor Tregub, who was part of the planning committee that helped organize last convention in 2022, and despite pledging not to endorse outside the slate, he did. He also blocked the Democratic Party endorsement of one of the 5 candidates running on the slate, costing our community a seat on the board. Now there's a member on the board, a commissioner who doesn't believe that all tenants deserve protections and is the only commissioner who voted for genocide in Palestine. We need to be vigilant. We need to be determined, and we need to help the slate that you, the community, chooses get elected in November, which means door knocking, talking to your neighbors, and getting the word out. I'm so happy that you are here. Either if you're not here live, or you're going to listen to this on Zoom recorded, and it's your opportunity to listen to these candidates. I am now going to pass the mic over to Matthew Lewis from East Bay DSA, who's going to introduce our first guest speaker of the day, Cecilia Parra. Take it away, Matthew.
Thank you, Paola. Sorry, we've got a bit of an echo because I'm at the watch party at UAW Hall. So first, just want to note that Igor Tregub, who unfortunately was elected to the city council, who Paola mentioned, also had his seat bought for him by by a PAC funded by the Berkeley Property Owners Association that actually took out an illegal hit piece on one of the progressive pro-tenant candidates who just ran in the District 4 City Council race. The influence of corporate real estate money on former rent board commissioners who sold out is even larger than Paola mentioned. Second thing is, I am posting right now. There we go. The link to the ballot request form. A big thank you to everybody who's come live today, but you will need to still fill out the ballot request form if you haven't already done so. And for folks who are watching the recording, we'll make sure that that is listed on when we upload to Facebook and YouTube. We'll put that in the description as well. So our next speaker is actually the only progressive and only pro-tenant member of the Berkeley City Council. Only person to ever be elected to the City Council while an undergraduate, and one of only 2 people to ever be elected while a student to the Berkeley City Council. This candidate was supported by essentially the same coalition that is putting on the Remport Convention today, including DSA, UAW, Berkeley Tenants Union, and numerous other organizations who, due to only having 5 hours of sleep, I am not going to be able to list all of them. Cecilia Luna Parra wants to make sure that we have real tenant protections. We've seen in the last few years that we've had tenant protections in Berkeley actually rolled back. Cecilia wants to do co-governance with the community. We've kind of had that a bit with the Berkeley Rent Board, which has been amazing. But we need that on the city council so that we can move forward. As we've seen, we can't simply right now we're almost running on a treadmill to stay in the same place. We have to move forward. Cecilia wants, as I said, to expand tenant protections, stronger union protections for labor unions, and to make sure that everybody can afford to live in Berkeley. Very, very excited to have, and as the representative from East Bay DSA, very excited to have our first DSA endorsed Berkeley City Council member. Yeah, so I'd like to introduce Cecilia Luna Parra now, who I'm going to me or one of the co-hosts could unmute her because she will not be able to speak otherwise.
Hi.
Okay,
So
Cecilia. Go.
Yeah.
Great.
I got it. Thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction, and huge congratulations to all of the candidates and their dedication, not only to the city of Berkeley, but to the solidarity between progressive organizations and to the vital tenant protections in our city. I also want to thank all of the organizations that are participating in this process. I know how gruesome it is, how long it is, and also how important it is. So I want to thank all the organizations as well, not only for this this participation, but for all of the work that you do throughout the city. I'm Cecilia Luna Parra. I'm the newest council member for the city of Berkeley, representing the most tenant-heavy district in the city. And I'm so happy to say that I think that the candidates that are coming before us today are truly representative of the city of Berkeley, of the tenants of the city of Berkeley. And I'm so excited for the opportunity to work alongside each and every one of them. I serve on the 4x4, meaning the committee that has 4 city council members and 4 rent board members that basically take up all of the tenant policies in the city. And I'm so excited to be able to work alongside my DSA comrades in the coming months and next year. Although I knew this before, I've been kind of realizing how lonely city council will be on a lot of different issues, but I want to thank the groups that are here for putting this on and allowing another institution to be held continuously in the power of tenants, of working class people, and to, again, all of the candidates here for being willing to step up and take on that role. And I think that together, in solidarity with each other, we can really create a better city with stronger tenant protections, with stronger rent control. And I'm so excited to do that with all of you. Thank you so much for having me, and good luck.
Thank you, Cecilia. I am now going to pass the mic over to Jonah Gottlieb, who's going to talk about the tenant protection and right to organize petition. Thanks,
Yeah.
Jonah.
Thank you, Paula. Hi, folks. My name is Jonah. I'm here today as the screener for my union, SEIU 1021. I'm here to talk about our incredible community and rent board drafted ballot measure, the tenant protection and right to organize ballot measure, that we're currently working hard to collect signatures for. We have a deadline of June 30th to get all our signatures in, and we are all hands on deck. This ballot measure would enact the strongest right to organize language for tenants in the entire country, which would mean that if tenants in a building decide to form a tenant union and they get over 50% of the tenants in that building to agree to join the tenant union, their landlord would have to bargain with them collectively. And so it really helps us shift the power from corporate landlords towards the people, and they're able to work together to address habitability concerns, to get lower rents, to ensure that their landlord is treating them in the way that they should be treated. It also expands tenant protections to certain other types of properties that currently do not have just cause protections or rent control, and updates some of the outdated language in our rent control ordinance from the 80s. So, as I said, we are all hands on deck. We need everyone going all out to collect signatures. And so, if you are willing to collect signatures, we have opportunities for people to collect signatures in paid roles. You can be paid hourly and per signature. So if you would like to find out more about that, please send an email. I'm putting it in the chat to Alfred, the campaign manager for the ballot measure, and you can talk to them and they can get you all set up and get you a signature packet. As I said, June 30th is our hard deadline. We have to submit signatures by then. So we're all hands on deck until then. We've got 3 weeks. We've got a good chance of qualifying. The landlord ballot measure that would roll back rent control in the city has already qualified. And so it would be disastrous for our movement in Berkeley if there is only an anti-rent control ballot measure on the ballot, but not a pro-rent control, pro-tenant ballot measure. So please put in the work. We need all the help we can get. Let's qualify and let's expand tenant protections and rights and organizing tools in Berkeley. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jonah.
And Jonah, I wanted to add.
Thank you. Next, I
Sorry,
wanted
Tala,
to
I just needed to add that there's 3 opportunities for folks to do if they want to come sign the ballot measure. They can come to Saul's, outside Saul's, this Friday, June 14th. I will be at Saul's from 5 to 7 p.m. at Saul's Deli. They can come and they can sign the ballot measure. That they can also come on Sunday, June 23rd, from 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. The Berkeley Tenants Union will be meeting at Grassroots House at 2022 Blake Street for our regular membership meeting, and folks can come sign the ballot measure there. Just wanted to let folks know that those are 2 opportunities if they're, and of course we still encourage folks to help gather signatures, but if they still haven't signed themselves, they can come at those times.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you. And please put that in the chat, please. I next have the pleasure to introduce a candidate running for state, our state District 7, who, as an elected official in the city of Richmond, was able to bring rent control to the city, the first city to do so in 30 years, and a person that we know is fighting for working class people and tenants specifically. With no further ado, I'm going to introduce Jovanka Beckles. And Jovanka, please unmute yourself and I will spotlight you. Oh, Jovanka, can't hear you. Need to mute. Oh, Jovanka, it looks like we've lost you, or is it me?
Huh.
Oh, there, we hear you now. Oh,
Hello? Okay. Can you all hear me now?
yes.
Okay, good. I don't know if it's my internet. Okay, that keeps freezing. So
Try to close your window then, your video.
I apologize. Hopefully it'll. I'm frozen. Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you now.
Hello? Hello? Oh, okay. It keeps I keep freezing. So hopefully.
Jovanka, try to stop your video.
It'll.
Javanka,
Okay.
Javanka, I switch to phone audio. If this is
Okay.
and worst case scenario, we can come to you after candidate Q&A, but for now, let's try and move forward with you speaking now.
Okay.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. You can hear me?
Yes.
I'll go ahead and give it a try. Thank you everybody for having me. It's really a pleasure and really seeing a lot of allies on this call, on this video. So and please excuse my voice. I've been really congested for the last week. So just like I said, didn't want to miss this opportunity to be among allies who are fighting for justice in Berkeley and really throughout the state. Jovanka Beckles, I'm current AC Transit board member, former Richmond City Council member, and now an AC California State Senate District 7 candidate, the only candidate, by the way, who is corporate free, who is not taking money from the landlord associations or apartment associations, the only candidate who is actively supporting the Justice for Renters Act. I'm really, you all have such a wonderful thing going on in Berkeley. You all have this organization that has done so much, not just in Berkeley, but also just done so much, was actually instrumental. As many of you know, in Richmond, we passed the first rent control policy in 30 years at the time. And I don't know how many of you know that we were successful because of the rent board. You all, the rent board was able to provide us with guidance and consultation in order for us to be able to pass that policy. And so while Richmond does take we do take the kudos, right? We do take a lot of the victories. We have to share that with the rent board, because you all helped us to be able to create that policy and pass it. So as you know, the California Apartment Association, they're saying that the Justice for Renters Act threatens to upend California's rental housing market. Yeah, damn right, right? Because as we all know, the rent is too damn high. And so that's exactly what we want to do and what must happen. The Justice for Renters Act, as you all know, is going to repeal the Costa-Hawkins Act, the state law, limiting rent control across the state. This proposition, though, calls for allowing for rent control on all types of housing. It would also include rent control of single-family homes and newer apartments. So if, and not just if, but when, I'm going to say when, the Justice for Renters Act wins and the Berkeley Tenants Protection and Right to Organize measure is approved by voters, in Berkeley, new construction is going to come under rent control after 10 years. That's a game changer. So I want to call on all of you all, Berkeley tenants, to help us to fight, get the word out, the message out about the Justice for Renters Act, but also with regard to your ballot measure in Berkeley, because it truly is going to be a game changer for renters everywhere. And I thank you all so very much for the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Jovanka.
Feel better.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, I'm going to pass this to Jonah Gottlieb, who's going to introduce our candidates and move on with the rest of the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paula. So if all our candidates want to turn on their video right now, that would be great. Thank you all so much for joining us. So we're going to have some questions for the candidates. In a moment, I'm going to ask each of them in a random order to give a 1-minute opening statement. We'll then have 5 questions for them that the coalition that has put on this convention came up with. And then, as you can see, Matthew has been putting the Google form in the chat for the audience to submit questions as well. So please fill out that form and ask some questions. We'd love to get to as many of yours as possible. Candidates, Paula, we're doing 1-minute responses per question, right?
Yes.
Great, thank you so much.
1 minute for introductions.
Alrighty, and then at the end of all that, the candidates will also have 60-second closing statements. So just in the order that the candidates appear on my screen, first we're going to go over to Elizabeth Gino. 1 minute for your opening statement. Elizabeth, can you hear us?
Jonas, he's with us in person. Give us 1 second.
And candidates, just like it was in your interview, Lindsay will have her her timer on her screen, so pay attention to that for your 1-minute timer. Elizabeth, you ready to go?
Are we ready?
It's unmuted.
Great, we can hear you.
All right. Hi. As I see it, I'm here to be the representative of low income and long-term tenant who are not students. This is sounding with a lag, unfortunately. So people who are not necessarily students. You know, I'm here to speak for senior citizens, people with disability, working families and workers, and generally, you know, people who want to be able to stay in place at a price they're prepared to pay, and with a little discretion income left for joy. We shouldn't strip everyone of their last nickel. So the part I'm really excited about is the prospect of the tenants' right to organize. My background is in union organizing, and so that's something I'm really ready to do. You know, I can start with the other tenants of Lucky Ready. My landlord is one of the bigger operators, and I could knock on all the doors and get people to share their stories, exchange strategies, and get some of the maintenance work done that's due to us. That is
Thank you.
what I like to do.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Next, we will go to Alfred. 60 seconds on the clock.
Main mic? Sorry, not yet, but now you can go. Okay, can you hear me through the main mic? Yes? Okay, great. Hi, everybody. My name is Alfred Chu. I'm running to broaden our coalition. I work with many different organizations, both locally and at the state level. Currently, I've been helping organize the signature gathering campaign for our tenant protection and right to organize ballot measure. And at the state level, in the California Democratic Party a few years ago, I helped start the Renters Council to organize tenants statewide. and also build support for justice for renters and other propositions. Other things I work on, I personally work as an architect, so I'm very familiar with building codes and habitability codes, and we bring that knowledge to the rent board. And personally, I'm a tenant myself, currently living in a accessory dwelling unit, and I've lived in a variety of situations, such as with roommates and the student cooperatives, and these are all different experiences I can bring. So again, my name is Alfred Tu, and would love to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfred. We'll go next to Avery Arbaugh.
Hello, good morning, Berkeley Convention sponsors and Berkeley tenants at large. My name is Avery Arbaugh. I am a formerly homeless tenant, a student at UC Berkeley, labor commissioner for the city of Berkeley, and the outgoing president of the Cal Berkeley Democrats, as well as a member of Cal YDSA, East Bay DSA, and the Berkeley Tenants Union. And I'm running for Berkeley Rent Board because at a time when corporate PACs are trying to erode the integrity of our rent board, we need representatives who will be really strong, consistent advocates for preserving tenant protections. And I believe in the power of the rent board to improve the lives of tenants, but I also believe that that power isn't passive. This election cycle, our rent board is facing the existential threat of corporatization with the so-called Renters Relief and Homeowners Protection Act. And for the sake of our rent board, I believe we have to fight back. And if selected for the tenant slate, I'll make sure that strengthening the rent board, not weakening it, is a really core part of our campaign. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Avery. We'll go next to Andy Kelly.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. Oh, I'm not really on camera. It's good to see those I can see on camera. My name's Andy Kelly. I've had the honor to serve as a rent board commissioner the past 4 years. I'm just going to start by agreeing with Avery that I'm very concerned about the landlord ballot measure. And whoever gets on the slate and whatever we do, it's going to take everyone in this room and everyone not in this room that should be in this room to make sure that we defeat that. It is an existential crisis. It gets rid of a lot of our regulatory authority to do things like ensure habitability standards that the city are enforced. People's heat. That's not optional. You can't live here in the winter without heat. And that's very crucial. We had them spend $130,000 last time trying to defeat the pro-tenant slate that we know of. They probably spent other money for the PACs. And I'm very concerned about that. I think it's incredibly important that we continue to fight. COVID showed us what's possible when the government chooses to keep people from becoming homeless. And we can do that long term if we're creative and work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go next to Commissioner Dominique Walker. If I can find the unmute button. There we go.
Is my time started? I can't see it on my screen. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Dominique Walker, and I am a housing justice organizer, activist, and mom. I'm running as an incumbent for the Rent Stabilization Board. I believe that housing is a human right. I believe that everyone should have the right to affordable and accessible housing. I work as an organizer advocating for housing daily through policy, direct action, and also now being a housing provider, providing transitional housing for mothers and babies. I am committed to protecting tenants. I would like the opportunity to continue that work on the Rent Stabilization Board. I believe that my track record and the way I have voted for tenants' right and against anti-displacement policy all over the world has proven that I am the ideal candidate. And Berkeley has a history of being forward-thinking, and in the face of all the liberalism and all of the things attacking us right now, it's vital that we have somebody strong, and that can't be bought and sold.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Xavier.
Hello, everyone. I'm Xavier Johnson, and I just want to thank everyone for participating in this process. As an incumbent, I have led the creation of the right to organize ballot measure as the committee chair and facilitated a process where we were very inclusive in all the policies we wanted to see added and the loopholes we wanted to see closed. In addition, I'm also the only person, I believe I'm the only candidate who actually has served as a tenants' rights attorney in the past, and I'm currently serving as a housing policy director. So my day job has always been a big part of helping me to understand the challenges we face in the community in Berkeley. And I think this is particularly useful because our city attorney and our rent board attorney staff sometimes take more conservative approaches. But through my legal knowledge, I'm able to persuade them and kind of explain to them different ways of looking at the law to help all tenants. As a member of the 4x4, I voted to extend the moratorium so that we could support and protect tenants longer. And as a Black and queer person with disabilities, I believe I represent a demographic that's disproportionately represented in the homeless populations. And so I'm constantly looking for ways to challenge that, such as fighting Costa-Hawkins, which limits single-family home protections. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Jenny.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny. I use she, her pronouns. I'm really excited to be potentially running for Berkeley Rent Board Commissioner. I think that the current and past rent board commissioners, as well as the Berkeley Tenants Convention, have done really cool work in promoting progressive policy aimed at curbing housing inequality here in Berkeley. And I'd love to continue to help with that work. Housing is a human right. I am a student at UC Berkeley, studying public policy, specifically trying to go into the affordable housing sphere. And I have become really involved in the student worker union at Berkeley. I'm a newly elected head steward. So I've gained really good organizing and political action skills that I think would be really helpful on the rent board. Along with everyone else, I've been super active in supporting the Tenant Protection and Right to Organize ballot initiative. And we're up against some really powerful and well-funded opponents, but I think that with our solidarity, we can fight back. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Our first question, which you all will have 1 minute to respond to. What does community mean to you, and how will you stay connected to the community as a commissioner? We'll go in reverse order. So Jenny, we'll start with you.
Community to me means a shared responsibility for both yourself and the people that you're in community with. And I think that that means picking up slack in ways that local government or government is not able to. We obviously don't have good healthcare policy. We don't have good housing policy. We don't have very good labor policy. And that's where community comes in. We need to come together, look out for each other, make sure people are fed, housed, are healthy, and come together in solidarity to fight against the powers that are really harmful. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. We'll go next to Xavier.
Hello, thank you for this question. I think to me, community means solidarity. It means that when you see others struggling, their struggle is also your struggle. And you take the energy and the steps needed to join them in their struggle and fight collectively to ease the burdens that everyone is facing. I think the forces that are creating racism in our country are the same forces that create sexism in our country. They're the same forces that create homophobia in our country. And so we have to recognize that for all of us to win, we have to all fight together and all join together. I think on a practical level, I think what I'm hoping to return to is back to pre-pandemic community involvement that I used to have. I was like just in every meeting, in every organization, just regularly attending. And I think the pandemic really, to be honest, like took that out of me. And in addition, I discovered that I was bipolar. That was a big kind of stressor that affected sort of my ability to represent. But I've learned from it. I'm recovering from it, and I'm looking forward to building the community networks that I used to have that helped get me elected in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Dominique. There we go.
Community is everything to me. So thanks for that question. That was one of the things that was really important to me moving back to California with 2 small children, is creating that community around them and around myself. Is taking care of your neighbors, the people around you. And like the other folks have stated, that's how we survive, and taking care of each other, because if we're a community, I can't suffer and you not, try to help me. And I think in Berkeley, we're gonna have to really, really pull on that sense of community with all of the attacks that are happening to all marginalized folks here, that's threatening the diversity and the very fabric of what is so great about Berkeley historically.
Thank you very much. We'll go next to Andy.
Yeah, I think the best example of what community is to me was mutual aid during the pandemic when folks saw our neighbors in need. I have sugar, you have flour, you need a ride to the doctor, I have a mask. That wasn't government, that was neighbor to neighbor. That's when you see your neighbor's garage door open for 2 days, and so you knock to see if they're okay. Community is what is the only response we have to fighting corporate control and corporate interests, by recognizing that we're all stronger together and we all have more to fight for to support one another. It's been incredibly isolating during COVID as someone with high risk and being stuck at home with 2 car accidents and a knee injury. Community is when we are just together, and that is how we win these fights. It's recognizing that the interests that are trying to extract the maximum dollar from every single one of us, from our rents, from our jobs, from our healthcare system, they want us divided and fighting as individuals, but we have to stand together collectively in solidarity across interests as tenants. That's my answer.
Thank you so much. Go next to Alfred.
All right, thank you, everyone. So for me, community means that we are all in this together. If somebody needs help, we help out. If someone has trouble understanding how this policy applies to them and how they can get the protections they need, we show them the way and lead them to what they need. And also with community, I feel is that we also celebrate the good times. We come out to people's events, we come out to people's celebrations, and so we get to really know each other and build that strength that carries us through all the fights that we have to go through. And finally, I would say that we have many communities. I think of myself as part of the Asian American Pacific Islander community, the queer community, the Berkeley community, and we're all part of this larger community that for Rent Board we should all bring together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we have Avery. Avery, can you hear us?
It doesn't let me unmute, so you have to request that I unmute for me to unmute. But yeah, to answer the question, for me, community first and foremost means solidarity. It means when we see a community that's struggling, we're going to lend a hand, whether that's a political battle or a battle with a lack of aid. But it also really means accountability. I believe strongly in the theory of co-governance. And if I'm elected to the Berkeley Rent Board, I hope to be a representative of the Berkeley Tenant Convention, not a representative of myself. And I think that means that I'm going to have to be showing up to meetings. That's easy for me because I'm already a member of a lot of the organizations, but that are sponsoring this convention. But I want to show up to Friends of Adeline, to other communities that I'm less tapped into, and make sure that their needs are being catered to. I'm in solidarity with them while also being accountable to them.
Thank you very much. And Elizabeth, let me know which one I'm unmuting.
Which one? Are we good? Okay,
Yes.
right. All right. Well, community for me is the feeling that people have of belonging and of relating to each other. That it grows when people come together for a common purpose. And it's what really keeps people connected and centered. And it can also last across time and space, because people who can still feel very connected to a group or a place, even if they're not necessarily physically with them, they can still support them, because just as we have solidarity with people in other places, other nations. You know, Berkeley is a very special place. I've met people who've been away and yet they still feel part of it. And so, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. All right, our next question. What ideas do you have to ensure that displaced Black and Indigenous residents are prioritized in their return to Berkeley housing? And we'll start with Elizabeth and then go back down that same order. So yeah, go.
Well, we have to make sure that all of these people, communities are centered and represent all of the conversations about the actions going forward. It's like we say in the disability community, nothing about us without us. We have to make sure that they're always there.
Thank you. Next we'll go to Avery and then Alfred will be next.
Yeah, so I really feel for our Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities in Berkeley. We need to right the wrongs of the past when it comes to displacement with a robust and comprehensive right to return for our displaced residents. And we also need to take a race first approach to looking at what communities have been displaced disproportionately and how can we bring them back? How can we welcome them back with open arms? And I really hope that with the increased regulatory authority that the Berkeley Tenant Protection and Right to Organize ordinance would give us, we will play a role in making sure that new affordable housing and rent-controlled housing is prioritized to our returning Black and Brown residents. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Alfred and then Andy.
Sure. Thank you. So first, I would say it's important that we hear from these communities to make sure that we're meeting what they need. Make sure that when the city is building affordable housing, it's located where they want to be. It's designed to fit the needs of their families. And then, of course, also in full support of the right of return. And I think we need to move beyond that also. We need reparations. The state and the county are both talking about reparations, and it's time we bring this to the city as well. And then finally, we need to continue to strengthen our tenant protections to protect those who are still here so we don't lose any more people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andy and then Dominique is next.
There we go. I am glad that Alfred brought up reparations. I was really proud to serve on the reparations task force for approaching BUSD. I think that's a really crucial step. But we also need to make sure we have programs like neighborhood preference, right of return. We need to make sure that when folks are being displaced, they aren't displaced out of Berkeley, that there's a place for them to go. We obviously need to strengthen all of our tenant protections, but Black and Brown communities are disproportionately impacted by rising rents and lack of economic opportunity, more affordable traditional housing being torn down, be replaced with high-priced market rate housing. That's why we need to strengthen the demolition ordinance, which I've worked on the board. I think we also need to be more present in the community, myself included, to be more accessible. I'd love to see the rent board form like an advisory committee that's official to help bridge representatives from organizations being able to provide us advice as a board and really help elevate that voice. On the outreach committee, I was proud to help Healthy Black Families get one of their questions or two of their questions from their survey about gentrification onto our official tenant survey. We need to implement those findings, and we need to look at the displacement study the rent board paid for. It has a lot of good recommendations, unfortunately, all of which is that we need to do more. What we're doing now is not enough.
Thank you. Dominique, followed by Xavier.
Thanks for that question. I think that looking at the work that some of our community organizations have done, like Friends of Adeline and Healthy Black Families have done with the equity for Black Berkeley and the things that they have brought to council, I mean, is what we need to do. I feel like organizations that have done the work on the ground, serving in community, they have the answers. And I feel like we, as elected officials or as advocates in the community, should stand behind them in advocating at the city level. I was at city council when Healthy Black Families presented this their findings, and I think that everything was solid, and we need to stand behind those organizations who have the answers to the exact questions that we're asking.
Thank you very much. Xavier and then Jenny to close us off.
Thank you. So this question is near and dear to my heart. I think the first thing that I've been working on that would be really helpful in this space is the right to sublease. Everyone talks about the lack of housing availability, but there's a lot of housing that's available, just landlords are preventing tenants from being added to that housing. And so the right to sublease would free up that space and give more opportunity for people to give a housing situation to someone who maybe just lost access to theirs for a temporary period so they can bounce back until they can obtain new housing for themselves. I agree about the right of return and about the reparations policies. I was a part of the group that was fighting for right of return in Berkeley, and I was part of the group that wanted it to be race-based and specifically address the harms to the African American and other communities as well. But and this really frustrated me. Our city attorney's office said that essentially there wasn't enough evidence to support that there wasn't enough evidence to support discrimination against different communities in the city of Berkeley. I found it laughable. I found it lazy that they had that approach. And I think my background uniquely positions me to be able to argue against those types of things when they come up. And I think that's a fight that has to continue. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And Jenny, take it away.
Thanks. Yeah, I love what everyone else said, especially bringing up reparations. I think that's a must, even though it probably will be legally tricky to pull off. But definitely bolstering right to return policies, ensuring that the leaders in Black and Indigenous groups are centered in new housing development planning, ensuring that that new housing is affordable, and yeah, just making sure that people can stay in their homes and are not further displaced. And so that's where the rent control policies come in. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question, we'll go in reverse order again. So Jenny will be up first. How will you engage with students and educate them about their rights as tenants, both during the campaign and as a commissioner?
Yeah, I think that this one is a fairly easy one for me because I am currently a grad student at UC Berkeley. I had the idea of looping in the Basic Needs Center, which does a lot of work for like food security and stuff like that. And I think that having like teach-in events specifically for tenants' rights put on with the help of the Basic Needs Center would be really helpful. I think that students use that center a lot. Also, yeah, I'm like really dialed in terms of union organizing. And so I think that there are thousands of Berkeley students living in Berkeley who are UAW members. And I think that one idea could be to have like political education through the union specifically about tenants' rights. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We'll go next to Xavier, followed by Dominique.
Thank you. So students are near and dear to my heart because I know that when you want to do progressive policy, you have to have student and community engagement, particularly with younger folks. And so as a part of my day job, actually, we do clinics with the students at UC Berkeley. And so I have some connections to the student campus through that. But I think just working with the different community organizations that are part of the university, because a lot of them do work both on the campus and off the campus. The protests, when they're organized, it's usually organized by students. A lot of the events around the city are usually organized by students. And so as I continue to just plug into all the events in our community, I know that that's the best way to connect with the students is the organized protest is a big part of it.
Thank you very much. Next we have Dominique, followed by Andy.
I feel like as an individual, it's important to get in contact with student organizations, like other folks have said, because they are the leaders, and political education is a big thing. And I feel like the rent board should also directly work with these student organizations. They know what they need. Folks who are marginalized, or the students who have housing problems or problems with the way UC Berkeley is doing housing, or whatever issues they might have, I believe that they have the solutions, and I believe that it is on us to be more proactive in engaging them in the work that we do on the rent board and at the city level. And I know for myself, a big goal is to connect with the students.
Thank you very much. Next we have Andy, followed by Alfred.
Yeah, this is such an important question. My favorite thing I do at the rent board is the outreach committee, which Paola was chair of and really vested the importance of for me when I joined. I was a former RA, so I really am. First, I know firsthand that student housing on campus is not affordable. It's just close to campus. So that's something we need to work on. But there's a lot of programs that RAs do. So I've been trying to work with our outreach staff to develop an official program so that we can train RAs on how to do like community programs with their residents around like move out, right? Because a lot of people in the community say students aren't here all the time. They're transient, they move around. Okay. But at the end of every year, almost every student is looking for an apartment. So maybe the rent board should always provide a program in April on looking for your first apartment for freshmen. Maybe we could work there's patterns and cycles. And so we should put out information on our social media, knowing that students are moving around move out. What should you look for in an apartment? How do you co-sign a lease? What do your parents need to do? What are your rights as students? We need to be more strategic, but there's a ton of students and we need to reach them better. Thank you.
Thank you. Alfred, followed by Avery, and then Elizabeth will close us out.
Yeah, so I think the important thing with students, just like any community, is meeting them where they are. That means working with the different student organizations, and not just the political organizations, but all the different ethnic-based groups, the different major-based groups, and interest groups, so that even the people who aren't plugged in politically are able to know their rights. And also, it means physically being where they are, tabling near campus, in the student neighborhoods on South Side and North Side and downtown, and also expanding the presence online. Students love memes, and we could really step that up here. And as an artist, I feel I'm uniquely able to produce a lot of great information that's easily understood and very shared. Thank you.
Thank you. Avery next, and then Elizabeth.
Yeah, so as a student, I've done my best as an individual to connect a lot of my other fellow students to the same resources I've used as a student tenant to fight against unsafe living conditions. But I think we really need to institutionalize a lot of this outreach. Students make up a third of our city's population and are some of the most vulnerable renters as new renters. So we need to have coalition building with the ASUC Housing Commission, with the Basic Needs Center, to have know your rights trainings and resources available to students so that it's obvious what your rights are and how you can make sure that you're being treated right by your landlord when an issue comes up. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth, take us home.
Thank you. I've got to say, plus some shout outs to some of the other Pete. Plus 100 to Alfred on better means. Oh God, yes. And Andy, great for working with the RAs. It's a good place to catch people who are transferring from campus housing elsewhere. That's a good time too. And I really like what Laura was saying about working with the Basic Needs Center. Either way, I'd like to connect with you on that because I think it kind of dovetails with the approach I've been working on in my day job. I was talking to a coworker who is a student advisor, and I think student advisors are another set of people who can be helpful here too. That giving a basic pitch about renters' rights as should be a part of orientation, and it could also be information that student advisors generally have, because they're often the ones that are in conversation with people who are in that state and that kind of thing. And to that end, just as an extra, in engineering, we get a fair number of foreign students. And so having some of the materials in Mandarin could really help.
Thank you all so much. I love all these kind of creative brainstorming things we've got going on right now, and I hope that all these discussions continue after the convention as well. Next up, what will you do to support tenants aging in place, elderly tenants, and disabled tenants? And we will start first with Elizabeth and go back down the line.
Great. I am elderly person with a disability, so this is absolutely near and dear to my heart. Now, one of the things that we could press for is to make sure that there are more ADA ready units at below market rate, so that people who are challenged with mobility or anything can stay in their town. They can stay in the neighborhood, the place they love, and ideally still at the same price. They shouldn't have to pay an additional premium at a time when their income is pretty much at its lowest. So, just to be able to do that. And perhaps creative working with, like, say, subletting or sharing between an older person and someone else to be their housemate, so might help them out a little, and they could stay in place. And that way it could work. Intergenerational cooperation.
Thank you. Avery, followed by Alfred.
Yeah, so a lot of the times when I'm thinking about the aging community and the disabled community, I think about communities like the Strawberry Lodge, who allow aging communities to govern themselves in an affordable community. And I think that should be the model for future developments that are affordable, ADA accessible, and offering just the authority over their own lives that older people deserve. But I also think that when we're talking about rent control, we should really look into the effects that we can have on taking into account cost of living adjustments to SDI and SSI income, because people on a fixed income are often outpaced by increases in rent. And we need to really be taking into account this person can't increase their income, they're retired or disabled. How can we cater to their needs?
Thank you. Alfred, followed by Andy.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the big challenges is that thanks to Costa-Hawkins, there are no rent-controlled buildings built after the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so we really need to step it up with the production of affordable housing to make sure that we are putting this group front and center, because they need this kind of new accessible housing. Other issues I can work on include there's been a recent state law that allows people to keep their rent control while moving from, say, an upstairs unit that only can be reached by stair to a downstairs unit. So making sure we're staying on top of those state laws, implementing them, advising legislators on creating new ones. And finally, group living is going to be something that will be useful for many people who may need assistance or may prefer living with somebody else. And we need to make sure that our tenant protections work in those kind of situations as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andy, followed by Dominique.
Okay, there we go. As a person myself who has a current disability and is unable to walk upstairs, I'm incredibly aware of how inaccessible so much of Berkeley is. In fact, I don't think any of my friends live in accessible apartments. It's a real issue. Alfred mentioned the state law. I was really proud as chair of the Rent Board's policy committee to work with the disability community to craft our ordinance revision that allows that law to be implemented. We should expand it a lot more. And Elizabeth's point that we need to create more accessible units, because disproportionately low-income people, especially as they age and are disabled, need ADA access, not just ground floor. That's a real issue. On the outreach committee, I helped put in questions into our tenant survey for the first time about elevators. Are they in your building? How often do they break? How does that impact you? And that data is now available and can allow us to help the disability community access advocacy and resources around that to improve our elevator ordinance, which I helped work on. But Berkeley is terribly inaccessible in large part because Costa-Hawkins makes all of our rent-controlled buildings old. The tenant measure this November, if it passes, will ensure that for the first time, elevator buildings and newer buildings are covered. And that is probably the biggest thing we can do right now as a Berkeley community. Other than that, we need to keep working harder. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dominique, followed by Xavier.
Yes, I would like to thank Andy for his work with the elevator question. I had never thought about that, so thank you for bringing that to us and making us aware that that was an issue. And like folks said, folks on a fixed income, we know that they can't take rent adjustments or rent increases, and folks with disabilities who are also on a fixed income have the right to housing. So I have like some ideas of cooperative housing, of just community ownership that in itself lowers the rent. And I think that we can look at some models of cooperative housing and make it a priority for our elders and our folks with disability, just like we're making a priority for, the right to return policy. And some of those folks, it's an intersection with those folks too. So I think we need to do a better job of prioritizing folks on fixed income.
Thank you very much. Xavier, followed by Jenny.
Yeah, I want to echo all of the things that my fellow colleagues and candidates have said. I think, again, specifically Alfred pointed out, and I would agree that Costa-Hawkins really prohibits our ability to ensure adequate accessibility in our units. I think some ways around that are when we have bond measures, both regional and local, that we ensure that there's adequate funding dedicated to retrofitting units for folks with disabilities and making them more accessible. I think that's something we can do through the 4x4 as rent board commissioners. I think additionally, as units and buildings are being replaced locally, when we fight for the units to be 1-for-1 tenant protected. That's an important part of it too, because then you get a new building with a tenant in that space that also can access their needs for disability purposes as well. There should be a process for ensuring that if they're going to modernize a building and add a bunch more units, that when the tenants return to it, it's also an accessible unit. If they're already investing the resources and energy to update the building, they may as well make it ADA compliant for the specific needs of the tenants who might be living in there. And so, thank you.
Thank you very much. Jenny.
Yeah, I just kind of want to pair what everyone else said, basically, especially about bolstering rent control, repealing Costa-Hawkins, ensuring that new housing is both affordable and ADA compliant and accessible. And I really liked what Alfred and Elizabeth said about intergenerational and group living. I think that that is a really good way to both build community and ensure that aging people and people with disabilities can get help that they need.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask my last question in a moment, but before I do that, just a reminder that we'll have an audience Q&A right after that. We've already gotten some great questions submitted, but if you have anything you'd like to ask the candidates, Matthew has been putting the link to the form to ask your question in the Zoom chat, so please do that. And also, just again, a periodic reminder, you still need to register to vote to receive your ballot, which will go out basically as soon as this meeting is over. The deadline is this Friday, but please register to vote if you need to do that. The link is also in the chat.
Jonah,
Yeah, last question, starting with...
Jonah, one is registering to vote for the convention is not the same as normal registering to vote. Anybody who lives in Berkeley who's at least 13 is allowed to vote, including non-citizens and minors. And the second clarification is ballots will not be going out immediately after this. They will be going out either today or tomorrow, most likely tonight. So just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Matthew. Yeah, so we will start with Jenny and go back in reverse order. Your final question from me: what is your plan to win, and how much time will you put into electing the slate as a whole? Take it away, Jenny.
Thank you, Jonah. Yeah, I mean, I just did a big campaign for head steward along with the union maid slate at UAW at Berkeley. So I have experience very recently in campaigning and winning a campaign. I can dedicate at least 10 hours a week to campaigning. I obviously have a lot of connections within the UAW here at Berkeley. We have thousands of Berkeley voters who are in the UAW, and we've gotten really good at organizing a lot of identifying leaders to help with canvassing, one-on-one conversations, just door knocking. So I have a lot of campaigning skills that I think would be really useful for the rent board. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Xavier, followed by Dominique.
Thank you. So I know that I have a track record of winning. During the last election cycle, I had the highest number of votes of anyone with the exception of the incumbent. And I'm hoping to kind of marshal the same forces that I used last time for this time. A big part of that is just the networks that I've established over the years. I've been actively involved in the community for over a decade now, I guess. And activating them by doing like the phone calls, the text banking, the emails, the like in-person events, just kind of anywhere that there's a place that's actively discussing politics or policy, or spaces that aren't but are interested in it, just inserting myself there. And then working with partnerships with other progressive elected officials as well, folks who know my track record, that I am always looking for the most inclusive and progressive option, and really putting the energy and the effort into fighting for it. I've had successes in a number of different spaces in the city of Berkeley, and I'm looking forward to continuing them, hopefully with this process as well.
Thank you very much. Dominique, followed by Andy.
Yes, I'm committed to dedicating the time that I have available to win. What I feel like what I lack in like being a mother and working several jobs just to afford rent, I make up in my organizing efforts. I have hundreds of volunteers who are willing and ready to hit the pavement to help the progressive slate win. I'm committed to being there as often as I am able to, and I have a lot of connections, not only locally but internationally, backing who would do whatever's necessary, put out things on social media. And then I have local orgs that are ready to organize on the ground here in Berkeley.
Thank you very much. We'll go next to Andy, followed by Alfred.
Yeah, I would first say it's not my campaign, it's our campaign. And if I'm lucky enough to be on the slate again, I want to win. I want us all to win. I want all 5 of us to win, or all 4 of us to win. But the top priority has to be the ballot measures and the campaign together. Every door knock for a rent board commissioner has to be a door knock for justice for renters, has to be a door knock for right to organize. I hope we all agree to support the affordable housing bond if council puts a good one on, because everything we just said is we need more money for affordable housing. We need 4 victories, maybe 5 this November, maybe 6. And though there might be some differences in candidates being supported, those 4 or 5 things are things we all need to do together. Because if any of those things fail, we're diminished. And if all of those things succeed, we have so much more opportunity. I want to do more than have the rent board be able to defend what we've already accomplished. I was proud to serve with Xavier to help write the ordinance that we're trying to pass. It makes a big difference, right? To organize, it's a game changer. Dominique knows firsthand what it's like to be trying to fight these corporate landlords. I had the same landlord as her. And they're the largest landlord in the country, and these people need to be stopped. We need the right to organize, and we need to organize together to win, and I will do whatever it takes. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go next to Alfred, followed by Avery.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So I myself have run for office a few times before, most recently in 2022 for the AC Transit, which was a countywide election that raised tens of thousands of dollars. I was also the treasurer and graphic designer for my campaign. Happy to be that person for our slate this year. And other things I would do is, through all my work at the local and state level, I've gotten pretty close with most of the political organizations in our region, and I can get us in front of those groups, neutralize the opposition, and get us all those critical endorsements so that we are the Democratic Party's candidate. We are every Democratic club's candidate. And that is how we defeat the landlords.
Thank you very much. Avery, followed by Elizabeth.
I think my experience in campaigns is one of my strongest strengths. I have worked on over a dozen campaigns since 2020 alone, from campaign manager to precinct captain. And as part of that, I worked for the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2020, where I was a field organizer in rural Northern California. And I achieved the highest vote count for Bernie Sanders in my county out of the entire United States outside of Vermont. We got 80% of the vote. So I have a lot of experience campaigning, and I want to be clear that if I am selected for the slate, I'm going to be treating this campaign like a full-time job starting in August. I'm going to be working in the trenches, organizing the people I've volunteered with on other campaigns to make sure that our slate wins and our rent board is protected.
Sorry. Thank you very much. Elizabeth?
Hi, I could certainly put in weekends and a couple of evenings for campaigning. And once I'm done with fiscal close in July, I have a huge amount of accrued vacation time. So I could take off 1 or 2 full days per week. But more than that, I have a tested strategy for getting people to open doors. One thing we found trying to get people to sign is how many people look through their smart doorbells and just decide not to answer. We had a similar problem organizing for my union. Well, we cracked it with the power of cheap labels and little bags of cookies we made ourselves. The 1,000 cookies strategy. People will open the door for cookies. So as I see this, we just get a bunch of white bags, cheaply label them as something like Kitty's delivery service. And once we're in, we pitch them. It works.
Thank you so much. We're now going to go to audience Q&A. So please continue to put your questions through the Google form. First, got one here. Beyond the Berkeley Tenant Protection Right to Organize Act, what, if any, additional new powers and responsibilities would you like to see the rent board have? And we'll start first with Elizabeth.
Well, let's see. Things that would be good to do is we could all have a newsletter, inform people of like larger issues elsewhere in the state or the country that are affecting us for context. And I think we could have more accessible information that people could download, because some people process information better that way, like a little bit of a video tutorial about some of their labor rights. Yeah, their rights for organizing, helping to understand the kind of thing. We might want to see about having sessions or even other ways of doing outreach to groups to meet some people where they are, as Alfred said. Yeah, we need to be visible and also to be able to hear from other people too.
Thank you very much. Avery, followed by Alfred.
Yeah, I believe that once we pass the right to organize, we really need to be going into large apartment buildings that are ununionized and doing know your rights trainings, specifically around the right to organize, but also just on what to do if your apartment doesn't have hot water for a couple weeks and you need to file a complaint. I took a cold shower this morning because my landlord hasn't had hot water in my building for 5 days. So I have firsthand experience filing complaints against my landlord to make sure that we have adequate living conditions. And I want to use that experience and strengthen the ability of the rent board to have these educational seminars, which increase the ability of our communities to outreach, but also just to let people know there are resources available to them.
Thanks. Alfred, followed by Andy.
Ready? Yes. Okay. In a perfect ideal world, the rent board would also have its own law enforcement division to lock up landlords that don't follow the law. And put the fear in there. But more realistically, I would say number one thing is we need to make sure tenants know their rights. And whether that's through more events or through online videos and other trainings that can make it more accessible to people. I think that's number one, especially as we are hoping to add a bunch of new rights that Berkeley tenants will need to get familiar for. Another thing that would be useful is if the rent board could put out a model lease that is tenant friendly, that tenants could say, okay, I want these conditions because I know that they work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Andy, followed by Dominique.
We are having a board discussion about more inspectors and being able to figure out authority to do that. For habitability and other ordinances, it would be a big difference. Paper rights, enforcing them makes them real. I think the rent board should have the right to consider all owners of multiple properties as if it was one property instead of trying to play a shell game of who owns what. If I could set any tenant protections, I would ban corporate ownership of single family homes, duplexes. That's a huge threat to our community. Those people are shameless and they don't even live here and aren't responsive to our community at all. But the outreach is a silver bullet there. It's so key that we do it. We're working on a language access policy that would require much better translation, especially of key access documents. I'd like to see night and weekend counseling offered. The model lease is something I'm actually currently working on. I've talked to staff about, but in addition to that, I'd like to see us find a way in our new space with a little bit more office space to bring in East Bay Community Law or another partner and have direct tenant legal advice available in the rent board office, not at a third location. Thank you.
Thank you. Dominique, followed by Xavier.
I believe that the rent board should play a bigger part in informing tenants on their rights, but a bigger part in helping build out tenant unions. I was in Barcelona, Spain for International Tenants Convention, and what was different was every neighborhood had a union, had a tenants union for their specific issues. And through those different tenant unions, it wasn't only folks who were facing eviction, like you just sign up when you move into the unit. And if there's a union, folks come and ask you. They treat the union as a preventative measure. And I think that we can take some of that and build upon it here. It shouldn't be, this person is about to get evicted, let's come together and act. I feel like we could do a better job of preventative and building power. So when we're at council advocating, we have all of that tenant power with us to be able to actually make a change.
Thank you very much. Xavier, followed by Jenny.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest spaces where I would like us to see more impact is in our advocacy potential through our like state lobbyists. I think Costa-Hawkins just hampers our ability to do so much stuff locally that providing more and additional resources to fight Costa-Hawkins, I think, is a key priority. I think in addition to that, I think the right to sublease that I mentioned earlier is another area where I think we should see expanded opportunities. I think it would be critical for helping to get folks access to housing when they lose it or if they haven't had it for quite some time. An additional thing I think we should be looking into and I have been working on is issues around single family houses and queer tenants. When queer tenants, when we look for housing, a lot of the time we're looking for spaces where we can be with other queer people and create a like happy, cozy environment. And a lot of the time that ends up being a single family home owned by a queer person. But in those situations, depending on how you structure your leases, there's potential pitfalls that can potentially cause people to lose their tenant protection status. And so creating clarity in the law around that is a critical way to ensure that. And then additionally, for eviction cases, for nuisances, they're really often used in discriminatory ways against Black and brown folks. And so additional protections for what evidence is needed when you file an eviction case in those situations will be really beneficial.
Thank you. And Jenny.
Thanks. Yeah, definitely continuing outreach, making sure that giving renters political education on their rights, both on the UC campus through like the Basic Needs Center and UAW political trainings, and also like in the city of Berkeley at large through other community organizations. We also need to provide resources to help enforce those rights. So it's not enough that people know their rights, we need to enforce them. Definitely continuing political action by promoting progressive initiatives and policies. I liked Alfred's idea of having a law enforcement for the rent board. I also had an idea of like rate my landlord website or app so that people know like the good landlords, the bad landlords, like, you know, all the details. But yeah, definitely focus on outreach and enforcement.
Thank you very much. Before we go to our next question, I just want to do a couple shout outs to some of our elected officials who joined us today. Thank you, of course, to Berkeley Council member Cecilia Lunapara, AC Transit Director Javanka Beckles for addressing us earlier. a massive shout out to Rent Board Commissioner Nathan Mizell, who is not just here, but was also the Wellstone Democratic Renewal Club screener for the convention. And then in the audience earlier today, we had Rent Board Chair Leah Simon Weisberg, and right now in the audience is Oakland City Council member Carol Fife. So thank you all for joining us and for all the work you do for tenants in our community. It's really appreciated. We'll go to our next question from the audience. In campaigning, what will you say to tenants to enable them to become militant in the way that they confront landlords and the policies they support? And we'll start first with Jenny.
Yeah, so again, through organizing with the UAW, I've gotten pretty good at knowing how to agitate people, knowing what will motivate people, asking the right questions like, this is happening. How do you feel about that? What would you like to see different? How does it impact you personally? Do you know anyone who this has impacted? Just getting down to really listening to what these people have to say, and using that information to, target your education and your agitation to get them motivated. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let's see, Xavier next, followed by Dominique.
I think on the basic level, first is explaining to them what rent control, rent stabilization is. Not everyone knows what benefits and protections they have right now. And I think once they have an understanding of it and they see kind of how beneficial it is to keeping people housed, the next step is then recognizing that, but you have to fight for it to keep it because landlords are trying to take it away.
Thank you so much, Dominique.
Yes, I think it's as simple as asking questions. I know I've knocked on hundreds of doors before the occupation of Mom's house, and it was before even the occupation, my job was an organizer, 2-door knock. And once people know what their rights are and what they have been receiving, it's naturally agitating, right? And building upon that, but then also offering a chance for them to get involved and make a change. I think that's really, really important. So informing tenants of their right. Did you know you had the right to do this and that? How is your landlord? Like, how is your living situation? That in itself helps organize folks and get them to actively participate in government and campaigns.
Thank you very much. My Wi-Fi has been a little funky, so I'm turning off my camera. But we'll go next to Andy Kelly.
Yeah, first and foremost, that they are not alone, that you are not alone, that I will be there with you. Whenever someone tells me they're filing a complaint, I give them my contact information. I check in with them. The process is scary. The reality is our rights are fragile. And the biggest tool that they have is keeping us from exercising them by intimidating us. And so to say, I will be there for you, our counselors will be there for you, East Bay Community Law Center will be there for you. I share the story that my landlord tried to evict me during the pandemic and failed because of the East Bay Community Law Center, because I was able to access my rights. But it was scary for me as a rent board commissioner. It was scary for me as a rent board commissioner. I could not know my rights better. And it was terrifying. Even being afraid when the mail would be delivered that it was a legal paper. That is not something we should have to live in alone and in fear, and that there's solidarity and support, and that fighting matters, because every time we win, we secure the rights for others. It's not just about you, it's about us. And you're not alone, we're there with you. That's what I say.
Thank you very much. We'll go next to Alfred, Avery, and Elizabeth.
Sure. So I would say that first and foremost is making sure that people know their political rights as tenants on how landlords cannot retaliate against them. And also tying in the tenant issues and the rent board election with all the other things on a ballot, whether it's city council, state legislature, the different ballot measures, and making sure that all those other campaigns actually are reaching out to tenants. There's definitely an issue in the campaign world where a lot of campaigns keep targeting the homeowners who've been there and voted for the last 5 elections, while ignoring an apartment building full of tenants who, even if it's not the same people every year, there's always somebody voting. And apartment buildings can be really efficient to door knock, and often the campaigns are not realizing that. So educating tenants about politics, but also educating politics about tenants.
Thank you so much. Avery and then Elizabeth.
Yeah, so over the past couple months between the 2 city council special elections and the getting signatures for the Berkeley Tenant Protection and Right to Organize Act, I've knocked on thousands of doors in Berkeley. And as part of that, I've talked to a lot of tenants, and I found that the best thing that I can do is listen and empathize, because everyone has a story. Everyone had a rat problem in their kitchen that their landlord refused to take care of. They had a broken window, which stayed broken until they filed the complaint. So being able to empathize with the problems facing tenants and offering the support politically to solve these issues on an institutional level really strengthens our bond with the community and humanizes us as people running for office to tenants who want to elect one of their own.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth, finish us off.
Well, I would start by asking people that if you have the power, and believe it or not, you do, to change things about your living situation, what would be the top 3 things you'd want to change right now? What thing that you can't accept are you going to change? And I'd list them, and I would do my level best to find at least one thing that we could help them with. And occasionally, and this is why I bring the cookies, I come across a situation where, with the best will in the world, I'm listening to someone who's totally screwed and there's nothing we can do for them. You give them the cookies, and at least you've shown that you give a damn. That might have been the nicest thing that happened to them all week. And that's how you maintain trust, even if there's nothing else you can do.
Thank you very much. Got another question going in the same order. So starting with Elizabeth. Let's see. How would you create opportunities for vehicle residents, people who live in vehicles, to own and safely live in our and their own communities?
Now, that's going to be a negotiation with some other areas of the city. We want to make sure that people are not tripped up by parking and enforcement or other rules. There might have to be some counseling we have to get to make sure that we help these people don't fall foul of anything like this. We might have to design a different permit process or identify safe places where they can go. Perhaps even if we do actually have a kind of permit for this kind of thing, that is a signal to everybody that they do have a place, they do have a belong, and that should just cut down on the amount of grief that they have, that someone just can't call it in or just bother them because they got a T permit for transport or something, whatever we call it. It just does that. And yeah, so they ought to be guaranteed security in there, some kind of safety, and maybe a reliable state place to be.
Thank you. Avery and then Alfred.
As I mentioned earlier, I grew up frequently homeless, and a lot of the time when I was homeless, I was living in a car. And I learned firsthand just how much homelessness is criminalized in our city and in our country in general. And as part of that, I realized, which is absurd to me, that it's legal to be homeless on the streets, but it's not legal to be homeless in your cars in a lot of municipalities. So I want to make sure that we don't criminalize our homeless people who are living in their cars. I want to bring back sanctioned encampments. I thought it was a disaster that the sanctioned encampment in West Berkeley closed without a replacement. We need to have opportunities for people to live in a parking lot in a safe, monitored community. So yeah.
Thank you, Alfred, followed by Andy.
Sure. Thank you. So I would say on this issue is that I agree with what Avery just mentioned, where there needs to be places where people can safely park. And fortunately, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just some other cities like Oakland, they've created what they call a vehicular dwelling ordinance so that people can actually rent a driveway somewhere in someone's house or behind a building. And that's something we could bring to Berkeley as well. And also make sure that it's done in a way that somebody renting a space like that has tenant protections as well. Other cities have what they call the tiny house on wheels ordinances. That could be another model for us. But yeah, basically it's happening. We just need to give permits and formally regulate it so that it becomes more acceptable and that people are protected.
Thank you. Andy and then Dominique.
We need sanctioned encampments. It was heartbreaking, as was said. I was a major proponent of Measure P, which helped fund that encampment. It's hopefully going to be reauthorized. I've written a proposal to triple the funding for it by making it index so that larger buildings pay a higher fee. We just need more money for that. We need to also, we never provided things like, if you're living in your car, here's free maintenance from the city, a mechanic who can replace your spark plug or help change your tire so that you can get your kids to school. Like, the lowest hanging fruit of people able to be helped in the homeless community are people who still have the ability to maintain a car or an RV. And so we need to provide like a place with showers and sanitary sewers. That's basic. And we aren't doing it, and it's a shame. And I was even willing to support the marina. I thought it was a tragedy that we couldn't just use an empty parking lot until we figured something else out. The fact that we can't do that demonstrates how awful our rules are. We need to change the rules, but we also need to change the political priorities at council and fight for those who can make that choice right now to make that choice right now.
Thank you. Dominique and then Xavier.
If we cannot offer housing, we can at least have a space for folks to be where they're not criminalized and moved to a different space. I think that we should have a parking lot, and I don't think folks should have to pay or anything. Those services should be provided by the city. We find the money for everything else we need. We can find the money to assist folks who are living in their cars, a safe place to park. The community like governs security, not someone sent to harass them. I think that the city can do more for folks living in RVs and cars.
Xavier and then Jenny.
Yeah, I want to echo what Avery and Andy and Dominique have all said. I think the key is us recognizing our space and advocating with the city, particularly through the 4x4 committee. Everyone deserves to have a home, and if we can't provide someone a home, we should be able to let them stay where they are. I think that at the end of the day, the city has put in place policies that have exacerbated the problem. Some of the vehicle registration rules that they put in place limited folks' ability to stay. at least the housing that was available to them in that moment. I think additionally, this is also another reason to support the right to sublease legislation, because those folks may have other people who do have access to housing that they could potentially be sharing in, but are not able to because landlords are preventing it. But again, I just really want to echo what my colleagues have said on this one. I think it's just a tragedy how the city of Berkeley is treating its citizens and its residents.
Thank you very much. And Jenny.
Yeah, definitely identifying safe places for these people to keep their vehicles, looking at permitting if needed, protecting homeless encampments, protecting our unhoused neighbors in general. I actually worked on a policy recommendation for the mayor's neighborhood services division for their encampment policy here in Berkeley. So I have some inside information on how they're thinking about encampments, and to be frank, it's not very promising. It's not great. So I think that there's a lot of work there to be done in making sure that the city of Berkeley protects our unhoused community members and protects encampments.
Thank you so much. Paula, we have time for one more question or two more questions?
Actually, we have time for closing statements because we're going to go over over our 1 o'clock time limit. So I think we can go now into the closing statement phase. And if you allow me, I would suggest that we allow the candidates to have 1:30 to talk about for their closing statements.
Sure, glad I asked. So let's go ahead and start off with Jenny. 90 seconds on the clock, please, Lindsay.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah, thank you. I'm super excited to be a potential candidate for the rent board commissioner. I have so much pride for the Bay Area, and now that I live in Berkeley, so much pride for Berkeley, while at the same time being absolutely disgusted by the wealth disparity here. And I definitely have a lot of respect for all of the organizations here in this convention and the fellow candidates. I'm so impressed by everyone. It's been great to hear what everyone's had to say, and I think no matter who is selected, we'll have a really strong slate. So I'm really excited about that. And again, just want to plug, I'm a good organizer, tried and true organizing skills through UAW. I'm extremely passionate about housing policy. This is like my #1 interest. And I would be so excited to work on the rent board. So thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Jenny. We'll go next to Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, everyone. I just want to say this work is really my life's work at this point. My career, my every moment of involvement that I have is dedicated to the fact that we just don't provide housing to everyone in this country we need to provide housing to. And so my commitment is to continue that fight. Whether I'm selected as a rent board commissioner or not, I'm still going to be in trenches, on the ground fighting, on the ground working towards these goals and on these causes. But I do believe that my experiences really uniquely position me to be able to offer a unique perspective on the rent board. Just a lot of the challenges are kind of lost in the weeds and lost in the details, and having a legal degree is just a big tool to be able to fight back against some of the strategies that the more conservative members of our government and society want to do. A lot of the times, like, some of the barriers to success are just that some of the city attorneys don't really see the bigger picture and don't see and understand why these laws need to be put in place in the first place. And having that language, having that background has been a tremendous asset and tremendous tool for me to navigate these spaces. It shouldn't be necessary. I've also worked towards demystifying the ways that our lawyers provide legal analysis in these spaces, so that the rest of our commissioners aren't being communicated with in a way that they don't understand, or that is difficult to understand without a background in the law. But at the end of the day, I'm excited to work with everyone who's going to be running, and I hope that we continue the work regardless of who's selected or not, of fighting for housing justice together, because that's the most important thing at the end of the day.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Walker.
I would like to thank everyone who put this convention together, and I am committed to housing justice, no matter if it's in the streets or in an elected position. I have a track record of the way I voted, the way I've supported anti-displacement resolutions through the rent board, the way I show up with having to work several jobs just to pay rent and be a public servant. There are so many other things that I could do in my time, but I know my representation on the board is absolutely necessary, and I'm dedicated to doing what I can to make that happen. And I also want to say during the candidate interviews, I was asked a lot of questions about not, showing up to certain things. And I do want us to think about um, representation and what it takes from community for me to be able to show up in certain spaces. When you see me speaking places, I have to pay for childcare. When you see me out in the streets, there's someone's watching my kids. And I think that we have to think about a way to support women, Black women on boards who want to be a public servant, who want to advocate. Where are the allies that are in place to help out for us to be able to advocate for ourselves? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly.
I just want to start by agreeing with Commissioner Walker. That's why I was very proud to make the motion to raise our stipends to the highest level that was possible, because too many rent board commissioners themselves have been displaced, and we will never have representation of lowest incomes tenants if they cannot afford to serve. That's one of the reasons why they're passing that ballot measure this November, to try to get rid of it, because they know if they do, who's going to end up there? People who don't need to be there. And we need that representation. We're talking about childcare in our meetings for the same reason. That's a slower conversation, but important. I too have not been as present in the community the last 4 years. COVID was very hard on me as a person who's high risk. I lost my grandmother at that time and was a primary caregiver. I'm recovering from mobility. 90 seconds isn't enough time to answer everyone's questions, but my email address is my first name and last name, andykelly@gmail.com. If you email me today or before, whenever, I'll call you back. We can have a meeting. I'm happy to talk. I want to be more present in the community. I'm working very hard on my physical therapy to get my mobility back. I'm really proud of the record fighting together. Commissioner Walker, Commissioner Johnson, and I have worked very closely together, very hard together. Whoever doesn't win today, even if it's me, I hope I'm honored to be able to run. Please keep going. There'll be slots in 2 years, and in 4 years, we're all termed out. You only get 8 years, and I feel like I just learned what we need to do the last 4 years. 8 years is not as long as it seems, and we all need to work together, because this November is going to take a lot more than the 4 people on the slate. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to serve and for the many people who put this organization together today. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go next to Alfred.
For being here to hear all of us. Again, I'm running to broaden our coalition. Too often, those of us fighting for tenants' rights are often pitted against those who want to build housing, but something we should be doing both of. I think about this is, if we're at a table and there aren't enough chairs, nobody should be forced to move. But at the same time, if someone else wants to pull up a chair, we should welcome them. And what that means in Berkeley is also making sure that all the rich neighborhoods in this city are doing their part in building housing, so it's no longer just the lower income areas being impacted by development. I'm running to make tenant protections and tenant movement mainstream, to make it part of every political organization. I've been doing the work. I've been part of many of these different groups and would love to serve all of you on the rent board. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go next to Avery.
Yeah, I truly believe in the value of rent control and other institutional protections for tenants as really essential countervailing institutions to corporate power. and I'm willing to fight to make sure that they continue to exist. In Berkeley, over a third of renters are students, yet students are not usually well represented in our city institutions, which affect renters. So I've already served as an effective advocate for students and other represented groups and a liaison between those groups in the Berkeley Rent Board and City Council. And that's why I'm running with the support and endorsements of city leaders, such as Councilmember Cecilia Lunapara, Kate Harrison, Rent Board Chair Leah Simon Weisberg, and Berkeley School Board President Anna Vasadeo, as well as Rent Board Vice Chair Solly Alpert, Rent Board members Ida Martinek and Nathan Mizell. But I'm also running with the support of student leaders, including 2 former ASCC External Affairs Vice Presidents and the leadership majorities of Cal YDSA, the Cal Berkeley Democrats, and Telegraph for People. If I'm elected, my seat will be a seat for this convention and for the progressive movement it represents. I really want to see our progressive movement maintain a strong majority on the Rent Board, and I can guarantee that if I'm selected for the slate, I will use my experience on over a dozen campaigns where I've served from campaign manager to precinct captain to everything in my power to make sure our slate wins.
Thank you so much, Avery. Elizabeth, finish us off, 90 seconds.
All right. You know, Costa-Hawkins puts all long-term residents in the crosshairs. So we're all in this struggle together. Because obviously for the forces of greed and selfishness, their dream tenant is people who are going to cycle in and out. So we should not allow ourselves to be pitted against each other, because basically we all are going to sink or swim together. We need to find ways in which we can connect, build trust, and hold the line to keep this place the interesting and inclusive place it was always meant to be. No person is disposable. Home is not a commodity. It's a necessity for life. So I'm here to advocate for long-term tenants and to try to bridge them, because in my day job, I also work with a lot of students and a lot of workers who either can barely make it here or they wish they could. There are people who have brutal commutes because they can't afford to live here, but they'd like to live here. You know, UC could be part of the solution and less of the problem. And I have enough strong ties to administration there to get a hearing and get somebody to speak. And that's what I would do. And also I can review and fight back against any lame budgetary arguments, because this is my day job.
Thank you all so much. Just one big round of applause for all our candidates for taking the time. Thank you all very much. I'll turn it back over to Matthew and Paula in a moment to close us off. But before, just as a point of personal privilege, just thank you so much to all the organizations who put on the convention. 10 organizations in our community submitted candidate rankings or grades from the screenings. We had over 7 hours of Zoom meetings in the past with the candidates, and 10 Zoom meetings to plan this. It really, a ton of work went into it. I'm grateful to all the organizations who did this. And then as the person who was the campaign manager for the Right to Housing slate in 2022, I'm really excited about our crop of candidates. I know that whomever are elected will be really solid and good representatives of our community. And I know firsthand just how much work it will take to make them win and accomplish all the things that we need to do. And more importantly, support them after they win. And so I'm just going to make the ask before I turn it back over of everyone on this call and all the organizations present to put in the work after this Zoom meeting today to make sure that we win in November and win beyond November. Thank you all so much, and I'll turn it back over to Matthew.
Great, thank you so much, Jonah. So a few things. John, I took some of the words right out of my mouth, but I'd like to start by thanking these 7 great candidates. I think it's honestly so wonderful and lucky that we have all the candidates this year are would be great Redbird commissioners. Any permutation or combination, I don't remember which is technically the correct term, of these 7 candidates would make a great rent board slate for November. And we're lucky that no matter which one, however we pick, whichever combo of 4 we pick, will be a great slate. And I just want to note how beautiful it is that all of these candidates, incumbent and non-incumbent, have basically said, you know, I'm here for the community, not for myself. If I'm not slated, I won't be running against the slate. I won't be donating offense for somebody else. You know, I'm not going to take some type of petty revenge or something. I support the community. We're not going to split the vote and let, you know, these non-pro tenant people get elected. And that also, of course, means that if you're not picked this year, you can run again in 2 years or 4 years. And that's a really great thing. Sometimes, you know, there's going to be 3 really great candidates today who don't get on the slate. And that doesn't mean that they're bad candidates. It's just, we have too many good candidates. And so hopefully those 3 people, if they're still in Berkeley 2 years from now, will apply in 2 years. Or if for some reason they can't do it 2 years from now, then they'll do it in 4 years. So yeah, as I said, we have 7 great candidates, no matter what, great combination. Like Joan, I want to thank all of our sponsors. I particularly want to give a big shout out to UAW 4811, which represents academic student employees as well as postdoctoral researchers. That's the merger of what used to be UAW 2865 and UAW 5810. Want to thank them both for throwing a Watts party that many of our, including 2 of the candidates, are at, as well as they have been, fortunately they can't stopped on Friday due to a temporary restraining order, but they've been on strike throughout the state. You may be aware, they have been, students and student workers were violently attacked, such as at UCLA, and University of California did nothing, allowed Zionists to violently attack them while the police stood by. And so they have been on an unfair labor practice strike, standing up not just for Palestine, but for academic freedom and for rights of student workers, protecting student workers. All workers deserve to be protected from violence on the employer's facilities, as well as to not have the employer do unilateral changes to their working conditions, such as unilaterally saying we're moving classes online. University of California did stuff like that, refused to meet and confer. So they've been on a strike. Unfortunately, a right-wing judge in Orange County put out a temporary restraining order. Hopefully that gets overturned, but we need to give them a big shout out. This is probably the first labor strike we've seen for Palestine, at least in my lifetime, but also it's an unfair, at the end of the day, it's an unfair labor practice strike. So big shout out to them. And again, thank you for hosting us. So now we have a few logistical things. So first off, candidate ratings have been uploaded. We apologize that those were not up earlier, but we put the link to that in the chat. And for those folks who are on phone right now or are not watching Celeste Sitting live, you will be getting emailed that information. You know, if you registered for this, if you registered for the Zoom or you have requested your ballot, you'll be getting emails with all of that information. So first off, we need to say, please, absolutely make sure you are checking your spam folder and your promotions folder. One thing we have found is that unfortunately, oftentimes these emails will go to spam folder, and 4 years ago we learned about something called the promotions folder. So you'll be getting kind of 2 sets of emails with your ballot. One will be coming from the Berkeley Tenants Union. Historically, we've sent the emails from Berkeley Tenants Convention at gmail.com for reasons that are a bit complicated, saving money on MailChimp, basically. They'll be coming from the Berkeley Tenants Union this time. You'll also be getting an email from OPAVOTE, that's OPAVOTE. So look out for both of those. You'll be generally getting those at the same time. If you have not yet requested your ballot, you must fill out the ballot request form at bit.ly/2024 ballot request with a capital B and a capital R. That is to request your ballot electronically. We also have paper ballots. However, those are intended only for folks who do not have internet access. We know there are some folks who don't have internet access or have very, very poor internet access. So for instance, you know, you might be a homeless individual who lives in Berkeley, is very comfortable using the internet, but you don't, you know, you don't have a smartphone or something, and so you only have intermittent access, but you do constantly, you know, like live in a specific place, you could request the ballot and we could bring it to you. So we're requesting that folks please only request a paper ballot if you don't have internet access, and you are able to request a paper ballot for somebody else. So if somebody doesn't, so like if somebody doesn't have internet access, they don't have to email us. If your neighbor, you know, doesn't have internet access, you know, they support tenants' rights, you can give us their contact information. The link to the paper ballot request form can be found in the main ballot request form. So just want to be clear on that. So ballots will either be going out, or at least electronic ballots will be going out either tonight or tomorrow. Probably tonight, possibly tomorrow. Anybody who submitted their electronic ballot request by a request for an electronic ballot before convention started should expect to be contacted by Tuesday. And contacted can mean either you're sent your ballot or you are just said, hey, we can't verify you live in Berkeley. We just need a bit of a, you know, something to help us. So that you know, it's kind of informal process. We're not like you know, regular voter registration. Yeah, so let me just make sure that that's the last thing. And then, yeah, and then finally, all information can be found at berkeleytenantsconvention.net. You can find the candidate ratings, you can find the candidate questionnaires, and you'll find instructions. We'll be putting up a few posts tonight, including uploading the recording of this. Again, thank you so much to the organizers, the candidates, the sponsoring organizations. And then also want to encourage if folks want to make a donation to help us cover our costs. We've put that information in the chat, and we'll put that also in the description for the video. Thank you again for everybody. I'm going to hand it over to Paula.
Thank you, everybody. And this closes the 2024 tenant convention. This is the 15th convention that has happened in Berkeley in the past 30 years. As I mentioned earlier, we have to be vigilant. We need to be determined, and we need to help the slate that you, the community, chooses get elected in November, which means door knocking, talking to your neighbors, and getting the word out, and making sure that you vote for the candidates. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful Sunday.